The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
So we're going to talk a little bit about Jeffrey Epstein. By the way, I know we want to talk bigger picture about this story. There's a micro story about this that I have for the audience, Pat, which I don't even know. I think I told you, which is that there are few things that YouTube will just straight up say are non-monetizable. Like YouTube is often they play a little coy. They say, if it relates to an active terrorist attack, then it would be demonetized, but retrospectives about 9/11, depending on how they're produced, are okay. Like there's always ifs, ands, and buts. Epstein, I was told a couple of weeks ago, like anything related to Epstein is just non-monetizable because it too closely relates to what Epstein was in prison for, and anything related to sex assault or child sex, like it's just, and if you mention Epstein, it's not monetizable.
I suppose I get that's why they're coming up with the excuse, but it just seems like it's a little bit too convenient. Like this story seems to impact so many people that are in power when you have YouTube like trying to make up these policies that are supposed to censor content having to do with Jeffrey Epstein. It sort of like plays into the conspiracy a little bit.
It does. And let's talk about that. So the news is that there's at least one federal prison worker who was on duty the night that Jeffrey Epstein was found dead in his cell, who has been offered a plea deal in connection with the death, according to two people familiar with the case. And the plea deal negotiations between the prosecutors and attorneys indicate that there are charges forthcoming from the Department of Justice. Remember, Epstein was alone in a cell in a special housing unit of the Metropolitan Correctional Center in New York City, found dead. And at the time, it was pretty widely reported that the two prison staff members who were guarding the unit where Epstein died by suicide, as is officially recounted, which many people question, failed to check on him for about 3 hours. And they're supposed to be checking on him every 30 minutes. And of the two officers who had the responsibility to be watching Epstein, one was not a detention guard, but was temporarily reassigned to be doing that, according to someone briefed on the matter. The guard, who has not been identified, previously was trained as a corrections officer, but was not actively working as a corrections officer at the time. And this is okay. The rules of the Federal Bureau of Prisons allow people who work other prison jobs. Like if you're a teacher in prison or a cook in prison, you can be filled to fill in other places that usually regular guards are working in. But it is there are a number of different questions around the specifics and particulars. And it appears as though one of those individuals has reached a plea deal to avoid for a trial, essentially, in forthcoming criminal charges. We still don't know a lot of the details around this, but what you can be damn sure of, Pat, is that this is going to fire up the conspiracy theorists, because they will immediately say, this is the patsy. This is who they are pulling in to take a guilty plea, so that they can keep covering up the truth of what happened.
And I feel like one's assessment of even this micro story depends on what you think happened to Jeffrey Epstein, whether he died by suicide or whether he was murdered. I think that's just going to affect what your take is on this. And to be honest, I honestly don't know what to believe. Like in the days after Jeffrey Epstein died, I thought it probably was suicide because he was on suicide watch before. And it seemed like, well, this guy, he's facing all this jail time. He's publicly disgraced and no one's going to be on his side, certainly no one in prison. So it seems like it would make sense for him to kill himself. But then you hear about the guards falling asleep and you think about all the people who wanted him dead. Like maybe there is some legitimacy to this conspiracy theory.
Not only that, you also then learn he actually had been taken. So, you first hear he was suspiciously taken off of suicide watch, and that's very well. But then you realize actually his lawyers asked for him to be taken off of suicide watch because the conditions in which you are held while under suicide watch are far less preferable than being taken off. So then, elements are added to the conspiracy, elements are taken away. I'm with you, Pat. I really don't know what to think, and I tend not to be conspiratorial. But still something doesn't add up here. Although I don't, we broke down the forensic pathologist, Michael Baden, who had been hired by Epstein's brother. We broke down his assessment of the autopsy. And a lot of the things he pointed to as suspicious were far less suspicious than he alleged. So I don't know. I really don't know.
Yeah, and I'm typically not a conspiracy theory guy. It's not like I buy into the 9/11 conspiracy or the moon landing conspiracy theory. The JFK one, I'm kind of split on. Maybe there were multiple shooters, but I'm not like over the top with it or anything like that. But this Jeffrey Epstein story, it just seems like it legitimately could be a conspiracy theory. And it's like we're not going to really be able to get to the bottom of it, it seems, too, because one, the person involved is dead now. Also, it seems like there's this big cover up being committed by the establishment, by the media, even with YouTube taking down videos having to do with it, with Hillary Clinton going on the Daily Show and laughing about it, and everyone just seeming as if they have no wrongdoing. The Clintons have no wrongdoing. The Trumps had no wrongdoing. It all just seems kind of fishy to me. But who knows exactly?
I mean,
what
it's
happened.
certainly a conspiracy theory. The question of whether it is actually there was a conspiracy is the one that remains open, and I don't know if we will ever know the truth. President Trump has issued pardons for 2 Army officers accused of war crimes in Afghanistan and has also restored the rank of a Navy SEAL who was acquitted of murder in Iraq. The officers include First Lieutenant Clint Lawrence, who has served 6 years of a 19-year sentence on 2 charges of second-degree murder and obstruction of justice after ordering his soldiers to open fire on 3 men in Afghanistan who were unarmed, killing 2 of them. He was convicted in 2013. The other pardoned officer is Major Matthew Goldstein, a West Point graduate who was awaiting trial for allegedly murdering a suspected Afghan bomb maker in 2010. That trial was scheduled for next year. And then number 3, Trump restored the rank of Special Warfare Operator Chief Edward Gallagher, a Navy SEAL, who was convicted of posing with a corpse of an enemy combatant in Iraq, had been acquitted of murder and other serious charges just a few months ago. So there are current and possible Pentagon officials who say that these, of course, the president can pardon anybody the president wants to pardon. It's legal for the president to do this, but that it could really undermine the military justice system. And Defense Secretary Mark Esper and Army Secretary Ryan McCarthy argued against clearing these men because it would set a bad example to troops in the field. And I have to say that I completely agree. And I understand why presidential pardons exist, although they are so often misused. One of the greatest misuses in my mind is to do anything that could even remotely excuse or signal that even though certain things you do while a member of the military could be against the law, in some way, there is a presidential perspective which might say it's okay and that a pardon could be coming forth down the pipeline for it. I think it's a terrible precedent to set.
Yeah, you could make the argument that he's undermining the military justice system, but he's already just undermining our own standard justice system that we have here in this country with his pardons of Joe Arpaio and Dinesh D'Souza. I think it's one thing for like a president to pardon someone who was convicted on drug crimes maybe 20 years ago and doesn't deserve to be in prison anymore. That's totally fine, I think. But the way that he's just willing to pardon people from a political perspective, like because he thinks it's going to be politically advantageous for him, or because, it'll make it seem like he's for the troops. I mean, that's not the type of thing that we want to see.
Not to mention, Pat, there's also the issue that it's very clear that Trump has this sort of availability heuristic where if he's aware of something, that's what he focuses his energy on. When Kim Kardashian came to him about, I don't remember exactly who it was, there are so many people who you could have made just as strong a case for as the person, and the details I don't remember, it doesn't matter, that Kim Kardashian argued for. But Trump doesn't know about any of those, nor is he curious. That's the important thing. He's not curious to find other examples. When it comes to the service members that Trump has pardoned here, again, it's often people whose cases are highlighted by conservative media. Trump becomes aware of it and says, this is where I have to act, when there are probably genuinely good cases of people who happen to be service members who are doing time, maybe for something that is far less egregious or not egregious, or the law is wrong, or whatever the case may be. It's all political and what Trump happens to see on TV.
Yeah, this should not be how it's done. It should not be affected by Kim Kardashian or conservative pundits. I totally agree with that. Trump about this said that, we teach them how to be great fighters, and then when they fight, sometimes they get treated really unfairly. Well, he could also make the argument that people, if they were, Iraqi civilians or whatever, if they were wrongly killed, or if they were unarmed or innocent and they were killed, then they were treated unfairly too.
Yes.
And I wonder, like with progressives able to make the argument that Trump really isn't all that pro-military, going after the family of the Gold Star family,
yes.
Number of other things like attacking John McCain, never really seeming to be all that for the troops, dodging the draft, all that stuff. Maybe this is his way of trying to make it seem like he's pro-military after all.
I don't think so. I think it's just he got the idea from conservative media and he's taking action and he's trying to keep his friends happy. I really don't think this is motivated by any greater philosophical or moral belief. I've seen no evidence of that, at least from Donald Trump. Here is a bizarre story. Hours before they were going to an educational conference in Indianapolis, 3 judges said, let's go get some drinks. And they walked to a strip joint. The strip joint was closed. So then they said, well, let's get some food instead. So they went to a White Castle. I've never been to a White Castle, but I'm aware of the burger chain. Do they, by the way, have vegan burgers now, Pat? Do you know?
I would highly doubt it. I think I've been to the one once in my life, and that will probably be the only time.
Wow. Okay. Well, no Impossible Burger that I'm aware of at White Castle at this point in time. At the White Castle, 2 men in an SUV yelled at the 3 judges. And this prompted one of the judges to hold up her middle finger at the 2 men, according to the Indiana Supreme Court disciplinary ruling. A brawl then broke out, a drunken brawl between the men and 2 of the judges, who were shot and seriously wounded in a completely bizarre circumstance, which led to the Indiana Supreme Court temporarily suspending the judges without pay this week for what happened back in May. Have you ever heard of something like this? Now, in Western Massachusetts, there was an incident, and maybe a couple, of a judge being caught drunk driving that I vividly remember because I believe it was either police officers or lawyers that I know that were involved in it. But this is like another level altogether.
Oh, absolutely. And the fact that they were all together, that's what makes it even crazier. But it makes us think that, hey, we're all human, right? If we're drinking alcohol, tempers can flare, fights can start, and things can escalate. And just because someone's a judge doesn't make them like necessarily good at dealing with a situation like that.
No, it does not.
And, people live crazy lives. People live crazy double lives. And I think this kind of exposes it.
Yeah. And we will see, whether they are credibly restored to the bench. Again, these are temporary suspensions. And as far as we know right now, they are going to be able to go back. It's also, listen, I don't know if what the laws are in different states with regard to what sorts of convictions can conceivably bar you from being a judge, and maybe it's only felony. I have no idea what it is, but there's a bigger question of credibility where if you have the person who is deciding what a just punishment is, if they have something in their background where they were on the other side, we talk about jury members who might be influenced in their perspective because of things that they have experienced. What about the judges who hold such an important role in court proceedings?
Yeah, and I bet it's pretty common for these judges to come across cases that have to do with fighting, that have to do with public intoxication,
Sure.
With weapons charges. And it seems like, they may no longer be the best to deal with those cases. And what are you going to do? Like dismiss all of them? Like those come up so frequently. But I think first they have to deal with the legal consequences that they're facing on their own before they can even worry about trying to become judges again.
Of course. And that is what they are doing now during their suspensions. Very bizarre story. And listen, I knew White Hut was it was a bad White Castle. I'm sorry.
White Castle?
White Hut is a place in West Springfield, Massachusetts that has great burgers, although I haven't been for 10 years. White Castle, yes. It just sounds like trouble. Anything related to White Castle sounds like it's trouble. Okay, here's an idea we have, and I want to hear from you what we should do. So off and on, we've been talking about this idea of having some kind of David Pakman Show related chess match. Now, Pat's idea, now that he is producing the Friday bonus show, and next week, because of Thanksgiving, it will be the Wednesday bonus show, because Wednesday will be our last show for the week before the Thanksgiving break. Pat's idea was, let's do a chess match where I play against Pat. And we think it's a great idea. We think it's interesting. It'll be a nice thing to do getting into the Thanksgiving holiday, but it's very visual. And about 60% of our bonus show audience is listening to the bonus show and not watching it. So our first thought was, well, we can describe the moves, bishop to c5. But the thing is, if you're not like a habitual chess player, that's not really going to paint a picture for you that's remotely interesting. So I want to come to you. What should we do? Should we do the chess match for everybody? And if you're listening, it either will be a little bit less interesting or later you find the video. Option 2 is we do like a normal bonus show. And then after it, we say, we're now going to the video only portion. We're going to do the chess match, find it online. And then the chess match is only a video format. Or is this a terrible idea? You don't want us to do it and you don't ever want to hear about it again? I think that's basically, Pat, the question that we have, right?
And the issue is we're not planning on doing a timed game. So this game could last, let's say 2 minutes, or it could last 20 minutes. And if it's only 2 minutes long and there's some banter in there, yeah, that would be totally fine for the audio audience, I think. But if it's 20 minutes long and it's drawn out and we're both thinking a bunch, like, will the bonus show audience that's listening only, will they feel as though they've been ripped off? I don't want to see that either.
They may be completely furious. But now, why aren't we doing a timed game again? Because isn't that the solution? Oh, we don't want the game to end on time.
Yeah, I think it's anticlimactic when like everyone's moving their pieces and you're getting close to checkmate, but then someone wins or loses on time. Like, that's just not right, I don't think.
I think if we did it as a 10-minute game where each side has 10 minutes, it makes it a maximum of 20 minutes. I don't think we would come up against, I mean, I don't know. Usually the amount of time you think also depends on the skill of the other person. Since neither one of us is that good, I don't know that we need to be thinking that the other player might be thinking this deeply. I think if we did it as a 10-minute game with no increment, meaning when you move, you don't get additional time, I don't think it's going to be a situation where it becomes a time scramble. That's my sense.
Yeah, I think there's a solution here, but we wanted to get feedback from the audience. We wanted to be fair to everyone. And is it true, too, that your other hesitation about playing this game was that you didn't want to lose in such an embarrassing public way?
Absolutely.
And then feel way too humiliated to even host the show going
There's no
the
question. I mean, I do think that if I were to lose, because Pat's only been practicing chess for a few months and I've been playing for like a year at this point, I think that if I were to lose, it would so kill my credibility that I might actually have to turn over the show to Pat, and that could be a problem. Yeah.
Yeah, that could be the bet that we make. This is all dependent on who is going to be the future host of the David Pakman Show. Will David continue hosting, or will I become the new host?
Yep, I think that will. That's why I'm so scared of this. No, but seriously, let us know what which of these configurations you think we should do. Let me know by email or send me a tweet or comment on the bonus show, whatever. And then we will have. I guess we'll make a decision by Thursday. Ideally, seems reasonable to me.
Yeah, I like that idea.
All right, very good. That does it for today. New show, new bonus show tomorrow. Twitch stream tonight, YouTube stream Wednesday day with the impeachment hearings, and then Twitch stream Wednesday night with the Democratic presidential debate. So it may be the busiest week, I would say, in the history of the David Pakman Show, in some kind of vague and meaningless sense. But many things to look forward to coming up this week.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.